Ubuntu. I am because we are. In times of crisis, this African philosophy reminds us of the importance of working together to strengthen social protection for holistic human development. Today, across Africa, COVID-19 is threatening the most vulnerable populations as well as those who are not adequately protected. However, this crisis is also an opportunity. We can build back better. We can improve social protection systems, and we can start with 4 key actions: enhancing coverage, closing financial gaps, developing strategic partnerships, and creating an enabling environment. By working together, countries can accelerate the extension of social protection on the continent. This will not only advance social justice and human capital development, but also reduce poverty, exclusion, and inequality. We can create a better Africa for all. So the question is, are you ready?
Thank you very much for the video, and I think we are all ready. It is now my single honor to invite the distinguished guests for the opening remarks. Our first speaker is Her Excellency Amira El Fadey, the Commissioner of Social Affairs of the African Union Commission. There is a short version of the video that will be played, but a complete video will be made available in the e-campus. Let us now listen to Her Excellency, the Commissioner of Social Affairs. Over to the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to thank the ILO for associating the African Union Commission in the holding of this very important high-level regional dialogue on the extension of social security to the workers in the informal economy and financing options for accelerating social protection coverage. The political will of the African Union leaders was set since 2009, when the program on upgrading the informal economy was adopted, followed and completed with a comprehensive specific policy framework, the Social Protection Plan for the Informal Economy and Rural Workers, known as Aspire Work. The Aspire Work Plan emphasizes the need to combine contributory mechanisms like social insurance and other forms with solid, non-contributory tax-financed mechanisms to achieve universal social protection coverage. The perception of all stakeholders need to understand and accept that informal employment represents an opportunity for many people to secure a living and safety basic needs. In fact, it is a lifeline for those people that fail to find employment in the formal economy and are thus forced to rely on informal wage employment, on self-employment, or alternative activities to survive. For most workers in the informal economy in Africa, the lack of social protection is a challenge, not only in their daily struggles to make ends meet, but in their aspirations to obtain decent work, rights, and dignity. For the societies in which they live, the lack of social protection coverage undermines inclusive growth, weakens social justice, and undermines the realization of human rights. Under such a context, strengthening national social protection systems, including floors to cover workers in all forms of employment, including self-employment, is a key element of reaching universal, comprehensive, and adequate social protection coverage. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to emphasize the priority for the African Union Commission to build a broad partnership for the acceleration of the implementation of our Aspire work and the AUC-ILO joint program on decent work for the transformation of the informal economy 2020-2030. The political determination of the AU political leaders enhanced by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which hit hard the informal economy in the absence of labor market systems to cushion the burden imposed by the crisis on the workers in the informal economy. Particular attention should be given and should be paid to ensuring that extension strategies address and promote gender equality and women's empowerment to facilitate the transition to formality as stated in one of the pillars of the AU gender strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize the central role of the social security institutions in the extension of social protection to the informal economy. On this front, the Commission will work with the ILO to organize in May 2021 a virtual meeting to consult the social security institutions of member states. The objective is to define the modalities of a cooperation and coordination at the continental level as well as at the regional level. This was decided by the extraordinary session of the SCC on social development, labor and employment, which was hosted in Abidjan, December 2019. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ending my message, allow me to express the commitment of the Commission to continue the collaboration with the ILO and other partners to contribute to the follow-up on the conclusions of this meeting. The AUC-ILO Joint Operational Plan will be adopted very soon, and we will be instrumental on that collaboration. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish full success to your deliberations, and I would like to thank you on behalf of the African Union Commission, the Department of Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development. Thank you, and shukran jazilan.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Commissioner, for your submission, particularly reinstating and reinforcing the political will of the continental body to support the extension of social security. You also outlined the priorities of the African Union and the willingness to continue to work with the ILO to move forward the agenda that is being discussed today. We look forward to the continuous collaboration. At this point, let me invite Mr. Munyarazi, the Director of the Regional Office for Africa, the UN Development Coordination Office based in Addis Ababa, to make his opening remarks. Mr. Munyarazi, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to thank the ILO Assistant Director General and Regional Director for Africa, Cynthia Samuel Olojuwon, for inviting me to participate in this important regional dialogue. Congratulations to ILO and your partners for organizing such a strategic regional dialogue addressing social protection, coverage, and sustainable financing. These and other sustainable development issues are key to recover better from the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the successful implementation of the 2030 Agenda and SDGs and Agenda 2063, leaving no one behind, a human rights-based response to diverse crises and challenges the region faces. Distinguished guests, in our discussions with UN resident coordinators and country teams across Africa, they have highlighted that priority attention should be given to strengthen social protection coverage in order to assist the most vulnerable to cope with disasters and pandemics such as COVID-19, to build resilience and to build back better. They've also highlighted the need for sustainable financing. Today's regional dialogue is an opportunity to discuss and come up with some concrete solutions on how we can mobilize the diversity of our expertise and services to have in Africa strengthened and comprehensive social protection systems and increase social protection coverage and sustainable financing. As we focus our attention on nationally appropriate social protection systems and measures and financing, it's equally important to also consider the interlinkages of all the 17 SDGs. They are integrated and indivisible. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has described the 2030 Agenda as the most ambitious anti-poverty, pro-planet agenda ever adopted by the UN. It is the integrated platform to respond to the needs of people and governments, I quote. There is need to ensure that issues of social protection systems are part of an integrated package in the way the UN system, together with its partners, respond to the objectives and priorities of the countries we serve. Partnerships that leverage different comparative advantages of various stakeholders are critical to delivering results on the ground, ensuring that we leave no one behind. The diversity of participation in this regional dialogue reflects strategic partnerships that are critical to success. Distinguished guests, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank ILO for their contribution in Africa to strengthening integration of social protection and labor-related issues in common country analysis and cooperation frameworks. As you may well all know, cooperation frameworks are the instruments through which the whole UN system approach marshals expertise and services to effectively respond to countries' sustainable development objectives and priorities. We receive very positive feedback from resident coordinators about ILO's active participation in country teams, leveraging your mandate that brings together governments, employers, and workers to set labor standards, develop policies and programs promoting decent work for all, contributing to the overall commitment of leaving no one behind. I thank you for this invitation to participate in this dialogue. And I would like to say that the Development Coordination Office, working together with our resident coordinators and country teams, will work with our investors, our countries, our governments, our stakeholders to make sure that we address the issues of social protection and sustainable financing. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murazi. I think what your submission has just said testimony to the excellent partnership that has been built between the ILO and UNDP, but also the entire UN system. And as you mentioned, the various offices at the country level are working with the resident coordinators for the purpose of really ensuring that the social protection agenda is grounded within the UN SD cooperation framework. So we are very happy with the partnership that is really beginning to bear fruit. And thank you for coming and making this very useful intervention. May I then at this point invite Ms. Sarah Razavi, our Director of Social Protection Department in the ILO. Sarah, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Her Excellency Admiral El Fadil, Commissioner of Social Affairs of the African Union Commission, honorable ministers, representatives from workers and employers organizations, Mr. Munyaradzi, Regional Director of the UN Development Coordination Office, Ms. Cynthia Samuel Olonjuwon, ILO Assistant Director General and Regional Director for Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to participate in this very strategic conference on the important topic of the extension of social security to all workers in the informal economy and the financing options for accelerating social protection coverage in Africa. Social protection is a human right. An effective social protection system that makes this right a reality for everyone contributes powerfully to preventing poverty, reducing inequalities, including gender inequality. And also we have cross-country evidence that shows that an inclusive social security system is a core component of any successful and sustainable economy and underpins the building of a strong social contract and a cohesive society. Yet, Despite some progress in the extension of social protection in many parts of the world, the human right to social security today is not a reality for the majority of the world's population, and especially so in Africa. Only about 47% of the global population was effectively covered by at least one social protection benefit when the COVID-19 crisis hit the world, while the remaining 53% of the world's population, more than 4 billion people, were unprotected. COVID has revealed very starkly the gaps that exist in social protection systems in all countries. It has also exposed the pre-existing structural inequalities in terms of where people are in the labor market, in terms of gender, in terms of migration status, and other axes of inequality. Countries with strong social protection systems in place, as we saw, were very able to react quickly by scaling up the existing mechanisms and extending and adapting them to cover previously uncovered populations. But in this crisis, many other countries that were lacking the kind of automatic stabilizers that are needed, things such as unemployment benefits, sickness benefits, and so forth, these countries were ill-prepared to respond to the pandemic. They nevertheless mobilized their existing systems and introduced new emergency measures to contain the kind of adverse impacts that the crisis was having on people's healths, on their livelihoods, and on their incomes. According to the ILO Social Protection Monitor, the majority of African countries have adopted some form of social protection measure during this crisis, totaling about 230 such measures between around early part of 2020 and December 2020. However, when we look at the global picture, we can see that most of the fiscal resources that have been mobilized have been in high-income countries, with only about 0.07% of the total having been mobilized in low-income countries. This is what the ILO refers to as the global stimulus gap. We know that COVID-19 has derailed years of progress towards achieving the SDGs. However, if there is a silver lining to this calamity, it is that it has shown the inherent vulnerability, not just of people who are very poor, but also of many of those people who seem to be getting by relatively well, what we call the missing middle, many of the workers in the informal economy. This has really underlined in very powerful ways the limitations of very narrowly targeted safety nets and underscored the need for universal approaches. And ladies and gentlemen, the good news is that a number of ILO conventions and recommendations provide clear and useful guidance on how to reach this kind of universality in our social protection systems. They provide guidance on the extension of social protection. For example, the flagship Social Security Convention of 1952, this is Convention 102, lays out minimum standards for the 9 branches of social security to help countries move forward in meeting the needs that are there. Things like medical care, sickness, unemployment, old age, and so forth are covered in this convention. Evidence shows that many of the short-term benefits have been instrumental in making social protection more attractive to workers in the informal economy. Moreover, the ILO Social Protection Floors recommendation of 2012, this is recommendation 202, and the ILO transition from the informal to formal economy recommendation of 2015, this is recommendation 204, both point to the importance of achieving universal social protection coverage for all. Recommendation 202 in particular provides clear guidance to governments on the extension of social protection to previously uncovered groups of people, including workers in the informal economy. Over the past 5 years, the ILO's Global Flagship Program on Social Protection Floors for All has supported countries in their efforts to build comprehensive social protection systems in line with these very important normative guidelines that we have. During the first phase of this program, which went from 2016 to 2020, many African countries initiated reforms to strengthen their social protection systems, including by adopting policies and designing and implementing new schemes. Friends and colleagues, having witnessed the costs of not having a universal and comprehensive social security system in place during this pandemic, we now truly stand at an important and critical crossroad. We can take decisive action about the future of social protection and pursue a high road policy approach with vigor, or we can just stumble through this crisis in what we call a low road strategy and leave ourselves totally unprepared for future crises and shocks that are likely to come. I therefore welcome this very timely regional dialogue, which has the ambition to pursue the high road policy approach. So what should be done here? Extending social protection coverage to those in the informal economy and facilitating their transition to the formal economy are key to promoting decent work and preventing poverty. Coverage extension can be achieved in multiple ways, and we have evidence from diverse countries showing that it can be done, the most common being by using a mix of contributory and non-contributory schemes. Attention also needs to be paid to benefit adequacy. Coverage on its own is not sufficient. The benefits have to be at an adequate level so that they're enough to prevent people from living in poverty and insecurity. Also, building inclusive social security systems requires them to be very agile and adapted to the evolving nature of labor markets, changing family structures, migration patterns, as well as the existential environmental challenges that all countries face. So the question we're asking here is, how is this ambitious agenda to be financed? We strongly believe that options to increase fiscal space for social protection exist, even in low-income countries, including through increased taxation, a larger social security contribution base, and a more accommodating macroeconomic framework. Here, greater prominence can be given to wealth and inheritance taxes, not only to invest in social protection, but also to address the rising tide of inequality, which has continued unabated during this pandemic. But more importantly, we should also emphasize that while domestic resource mobilization must remain the cornerstone of national social protection systems, for developing countries in particular, it is absolutely critical that domestic financing efforts are supported by an enabling global financial architecture. Luckily, there are important ongoing discussions initiated in the context of the UN by the Secretary General on how to make the existing financial architecture more enabling for developing countries, including very important discussions about the internationally agreed debt restructuring, issuance of special drawing rights, and greater international cooperation on tax matters, including better coordination on corporate taxation and including multinational corporations that currently manage to avoid taxation through profit shifting. So let me end by saying, yes, I just want to say that it's very important that universal social protection is supported through joint efforts of United Nations agencies working as one, as well as with other partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that elaborate intervention. I just want to pick a few words that have come out from your presentation. One, social protection is a human right. Social protection makes economic sense. COVID-19 has really brought bare the vulnerability and inequality that exists in our communities, in our countries, that so many countries have adopted some kind of social protection intervention during the COVID-19. But the resources that have come are mainly from the developed countries and not necessarily being domestically mobilized. That the cost of not having a comprehensive social protection is huge, and we really need to address, and some of the recommendations that you have made, and I think will be the subject of discussion. Participant, it is now my single honor to invite the Assistant Director General and Regional Director for Africa, Madame Cynthia Samuel Olongiwon, to address and open this meeting. Madame Regional Director, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Her Excellency Amir El-Fadel, Commissioner for Social Affairs, honorable ministers, representatives of workers and employers organizations, Mr. Munyaradzi, the Regional Director for the UNDCO in Africa, and my colleagues from the UN family, from the development community, including the Director of the Department of Social Protection of the ILO, Dr. Zavi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, universal social protection throughout the life cycle is essential for realizing the human right to social security for all, for advancing social justice, for promoting inclusive growth, for addressing gender inequality, and at the same time accelerating progress towards achieving the SDGs, as was mentioned by the Regional Director of UNDCO. We're very pleased that many countries in Africa have developed policies that are aimed at promoting social protection and ensuring effective access to social security for all. Moreover, in Africa, the right to social security is enshrined in many of the constitutions. In addition to this, and as well articulated by the Commissioner for Social Affairs, the African Union has developed frameworks, policies, strategies, which reflect social protection as a very important instrument for eradicating poverty, promoting inclusive development, and enhancing growth. Two references are, of course, the AU Agenda 2063, which provides the vision for the Africa that we want, as well as the AU Social Protection Plan for the Informal Economy and Rural Workers, PIREWorks, which were already identified by Madam Commissioner. In addition to this, the 2019 Abidjan Declaration on Advancing Social Justice and Shaping the Future of Work in Africa clearly called for progressively extending sustainable social protection coverage for all Africans. This makes extending social protection a key priority for Africa, as well as for the ILO in Africa. However, the lived reality of Africans in terms of social protection coverage is far from ideal. The most recent ILO estimates show that 17.8% of Africans enjoy the most basic form of social protection coverage. Again, I repeat, 17.8, less than 18% of Africans enjoy the most basic form of social protection. And this is compared with the global average of 45%. This coverage gap in Africa is associated with a significant underinvestment in social protection, and the average social protection expenditure compared to GDP in Africa is less than 5%. And this is compared with the global average of 8.6%. As has been said by the speakers before me, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the situation. The crisis has exposed glaring gaps in social protection and underscored the worrying consequences of insufficient coverage, particularly in the informal economy. The pandemic has also reinforced the importance of ensuring adequate social protection coverage over the life cycle and across all forms of employment. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, extending social protection to the informal economy workers requires a new way of thinking, a new way of programming, and we have to look for innovative financing mechanisms. Over the years, the ILO has worked to extend social protection to workers in the informal economy, and the Director of Social Protection has already referred to the instruments that we have, Convention 102, Recommendation 202, as well as the Informal Economy Recommendation 204. In addition to all this, we have undertaken interventions in Africa to support the development of effective social protection in our member states. Governments, in collaboration with social partners and other stakeholders through social dialogue, are encouraged to take advantage of existing social security institutions and the knowledge base that provides useful lessons learned and would help them put in place appropriate and innovative mechanisms to extend social protection coverage. African countries must close the financing gap, and this requires multiplying by 2.5% their current investment in social protection and health. Lessons learned from global and continental experiences show that there are several options for creating fiscal space for social protection. As I begin to round up, ladies and gentlemen, the lack of social protection compromises the resilience, the growth, gender equality, and inclusive sustainable development of Africa. It is a major obstacle to the achievement of the SDGs as well as the AU Agenda 2063. This major development deficit is completely unacceptable. This has to change. And in this regard, the ILO is implementing a bold and comprehensive strategy for accelerating social protection coverage in Africa that will enable us raise the average coverage from 17.8 to 40% by 2025. This strategy includes action to extend protection to the informal economy workers, supporting constituents to identify effective funding mechanisms, strengthening partnerships, helping to create the enabling environment, as well as support for accurate and timely social protection statistics. This dialogue, this very important dialogue, constitutes a first initiative within the strategy to enable us come together, address the challenges, and come up with the way forward that will enable us achieve this 40% by 2025. 2025 is just 4 years from now. We do not have the luxury of time. It cannot be business as usual. We cannot continue to work in silos. We must work together. We must build bridges if we're to achieve the results. We must also innovate. We must scale up. Ministries of finance and multilateral financial institutions are key partners in this important policy dialogue. I strongly believe that the diverse experiences and expertise availed today will inspire all countries in Africa to build forward better and work together with all the stakeholders represented in this virtual meeting to reach 40% social protection coverage in Africa by 2025. Can we do this together? Of course we can. And as the Obama machinery said a few years ago, yes, we can. The ILO is committed to making seed funds. We're not a funding agency, but because of our commitment to this venture, we're committed to making seed funds available in addition to our technical expertise and strengthening partnerships to ensure that we begin the implementation of the conclusions of this meeting. So with this, I want to say thanks to all of you who are here. Thanks for your attention, and we look forward to very, very, very useful discussions and concrete recommendations. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Assistant Director General. You have said it all. The 17.8% current level of coverage is unacceptable. The lack of social protection will undermine the achievement of the SDGs and agendas 2063. To change this situation around, we need a new thinking. We need innovative ways of mobilizing domestic financing. I think the message is very clear. The current level of 5% of GDP can actually be increased if there is the political will and, of course, the resources are available. Thank you very much for your submission. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers who gave their remarks during the opening.